to the lesson on using the job posting screens. I am currently at the JobMaster Pro main menu, and I'm going to click into the Job Center screen by clicking the Jobs button on the toolbar. Now once a job is set up, then we can access information about that job in the Job Center screen. Now if you reviewed the job setup lessons, then you know that you can come into this screen to start recording the detail about the job, the material, the labor, and the direct portions of the job. So I'm going to type in my job number and hit enter, and it will bring up the information about the job when it was originally set up. Now you can use all the different find features in the system as well. So if you want to find a job, you can click into the find button on the toolbar, and you can find the job by using all these different criteria. Or as I exit here, you could also click into like the job location or the job description field, start typing in part of the location or description and pressing F5. Then you'll get a list of all the jobs that have that location or description depending on the field that you use. You can double click on a job from there as well. So if you don't have the job number readily available, you can easily find the job number very quickly. You can also find it in the Job Center screen. So if I use my to go back to the Customer Center, I can find the job in here as well. So if I know the customer, I can go into the Jobs tab and find all that customer's jobs and double click on the one that I want to work on, which takes me right back to the Job Center screen. Now if we look at this job, we know that there is no activity on this job. It's not a contract job. I know that because of the job type, as well as the fact that there is no budget on this job. So we're working essentially with a time and material job here. Plus I know that there is no activity on this job because these numbers in the work in progress area get automatically updated every time you post material and labor to a job, be it through the job posting screens directly or through AP, payroll, or purchase orders. So what I'm going to do is just work in the JobMaster Pro's job posting screens. So I'm going to click on the material button on the toolbar, which takes me to the material posting screen. And before I actually post any material on the screen and show you the different ways that you can do that, I want to talk about the screen itself. Because each user on a network can customize this screen. When you first come into it, you might see some of the fields are a little bit small. You might want to use your mouse cursor. Notice what I'm doing is I'm just placing my mouse cursor between two columns, and when the two arrows show up, I'm going to use my left mouse key and drag that column open. So you can do that with these columns to get them to the right size that you want, and once you do that, these will stay permanently this way for each user. If you are a user who'd like to see things a little bit bigger, you can click into the Fonts button on the toolbar, because you can control the size of these posting screens. And what I would do is select font style, regular or bold, either one, but the size is what's important. If I click 10 here and I click OK, you're going to automatically see the posting screen resize itself according to that font. And again, this is saved by user, so you don't have to do it each time you work in these screens. But because there are 3 posting screens, you would want to do this kind of thing, resizing kind of thing in each of the 3 posting screens. Now let's talk about posting materials to a job. The first column that you see here is called the page column, and if you're interested at all in separating a job out into different sections or pages, you can use page numbers to do that. Just review the lessons on setting up pages, job pages, and how to use those. They're used primarily for contract jobs, but even on T&M, if you wanted to separate this job out into different pages, you do have advantages because you do get job costing by page. You can even bill out a job by limiting the invoice to a certain page or section of the job as well. But because this is a T&M job, I'm just going to press enter through my first line here. Now the item number, this represents the item number for any item in my material price book. Now if you've already built your field sheets, you know that you can type in an item off the field sheet. It will bring out the description, and then you can just quickly enter the quantity for that item that was used on the job. Now there's your cost, there's your job markup, there's your price. Now I can even control discounts on a line by line, but I'm not going to worry about that for this particular job. Now the job was also set up as taxable, which is why tax was calculated based on my tax code. So this is the charge amount that the customer will be charged, and this is the additional tax. Now the job type here, this comes from the overall job that was set up. So when you look at the job center screen and you look at the job type, that's where this is coming from. But because your sales being recorded in the general ledger is broken up by job type, you could have each item being posted to different job type codes, which are then attached to sales accounts in your general ledger, which is pretty cool. Now as I press enter through here, I'm brought to some other fields like the inventory field. I'm not going to worry about inventory right now, but if I wanted to have all the materials taken out of a certain inventory, truck inventory or whatever, I can use the designation for that inventory here to have that material pulled out of that specific inventory. And this inventory code, by the way, can be set up for the job itself so that you don't have to type it in at this point. But each item could conceivably come out of different inventories. Now as we do pull items out of an inventory, be it the main price book inventory or a truck inventory, etc., Cobra will verify that that item does exist in that inventory. If it doesn't, you will receive a message like this. But if the item does come out of an inventory, Cobra will check the on-hand quantity for that item, and if that item gets below the reorder level, then Cobra will at this point give you a message on screen saying that the item that you just posted has now brought the on-hand quantity below the reorder level, thereby kind of reminding you to handle the reordering of that item. Now I'm going to post another item in here, but this time I'm going to turn on my quick entry. Because if I'm using field sheets, I don't need to be bouncing through all these different fields. So the quick entry, the lightning bolt here, allows me to quickly enter these items right off of a field sheet. So if I wanted item number 130 and I wanted 50 of them, there's the posting for that. Now this item came out of the price book without a cost, so I'm going to just click in here and type in a cost for the item. And then you see everything is recalculated for you. So I can continue going like this, pulling items out of my price book using my field sheets, which is really cool. I can also just type an item in here. So maybe it's a special lamp or something from a supplier, and maybe your invoice number for reference can be put in there. So in this case, I'll type in that I ordered 5 of them. And, I had my quick entry on, so I'm just going to click back in here, turn the quick entry off for a moment. Type in the cost for each one of these lamps, and even what I want to mark each of them up. So you're not limited to items in the price book. You can actually just type items in here. So until you begin using other portions of the system, the accounts payable, purchase order, for your material side of things, you can charge everything directly to the job right here. Now, some other things we can do in here is, let's say that this particular item, this line, as I highlight it way over on the left, I want to keep track of this because these are special lamps that we purchased just for this job, and I want to keep those in history for this customer till the end of time if I want to. So I click on that line at the very left so it's all highlighted, and I click the history button on the toolbar, which then allows me to transfer that item into history notes. Now what this is saying is you can type in a brand new keyword if you don't see an existing keyword already in here. Otherwise, I'm just going to double click on the history keyword called lamps, and that will automatically transfer that note right into history. All done. It's there. So if you went into that customer's history notes, which you could do from Job Center, by the way, you would see that line item there, which is pretty cool. Now, before you do begin using other areas of the program, I wanted to show you a couple of things, because if this item was posted to a job through purchase orders, the PO number would be attached to that line item. And the same with accounts payable. Once you begin using accounts payable and updating job cost with invoice amounts, the invoice number will show up here as well. So that's pretty cool. But let's go back to our posting here, and I want to show you a couple of other neat tools that you have available here. Let's say that the item I'm going to be posting on this line, I don't want to have my customer billed for it. You notice this Do Not Bill button on the toolbar. If I click that, Cobra will automatically put the letters DNB, or Do Not Bill, in the invoice column. And that will trigger the invoicing program to not bill this out for the customer. So let's say that you're doing some warranty work, or you had to replace something that was broken or whatever. It affects the job in terms of the costs, but you don't want to bill the customer for it. So Cobra is going to intelligently handle that for you in terms of job cost. Now, you can also reset any Do Not Bill item as well. So if temporarily you marked it as Do Not Bill, you can reset that item by clicking the Reset button here. So it really gives you control over when items get on an invoice or not, if you don't want them to be on an invoice at all. But the cost for the job is always going to be updated. So if I click out of this material screen by clicking the exit button, you're going to see that the job's actuals or work in progress information is being updated for you automatically. And this is consistent throughout the program. Whenever anything is posted to a job, these numbers are being updated for you automatically. So let's go back into our material posting screen. I'll show you a couple of other new tricks. If you're using a supplier-specific price book and you have their catalog number readily available, you can find the item directly without even going into the price book search window. So if you know the item catalog number from your supplier, you can type that in the description field, and when you press F5, Cobra will go out and find that item in your price book and display it on the screen, and you can continue on with your postings. Likewise with the vendor part field, the search that I just showed you works with the what's called the trade number in the price book for the item. So whatever's stored in the trade number field, the F5 key works for that for an instant search. Otherwise, I'll show you another way you can find this item. So if you're using the vendor part field in your price book for this item to carry another catalog number, maybe you buy it from 2 different suppliers or whatever, you can type in a supplier number here that is stored in the price book's vendor part field, and when you press F2, it will likewise go out and find that item. So, some neat ways to find items. Now this time I've only showed you how to use the field sheet in conjunction with your job postings. I showed you the quick entry. We entered an item manually. We put that item into history notes because we want to keep track of that. We marked an item as not billable to the customer using the Do Not Bill feature. And I showed you the F2 and F5 searches based on what fields are being used in the price book center. So in other words, this item, if we were to look up this item in the price book, it would have had the trade number that I typed in here, and when I press F5, it found this item directly in the price book. We did the same by using the vendor part field in the price book to find an item directly, and that was by typing the vendor part in the description field and pressing F2 to have it automatically bring it on the screen. So that's pretty cool. But let's do this. Let's get into some of our price book searches. When I'm in the item number column and I double click on that column, it takes me right into my price book lookup window, where I can use all of the price book lookups that you've learned long time ago by reviewing the price book searches video. So if I'm looking for an EMT item, I can double click on EMT, and I could even say, oh, I only want a certain size of EMT or a certain type of EMT. I can use all these different search options at the lower right of the screen. So I encourage you to revisit the price book searches, because those are very quick when you need to get into your price book and find items quickly. But while you're in here, you can do some neat things, because if you wanted to select several items from here, you can do that by highlighting them, holding your control key down and highlighting them. Then when you hit select, they're actually posted to the job. You probably saw them come up here. So I could stay right in this screen and continue selecting items from my price book lookup. When I hit select again, they're on the job. So that makes using the price book lookup really fast and snappy for you. Now when I exit here, you can see all those items posted, but we put a quantity of 1 in there, so you may want to click in there and record the proper quantities so that your charges come out correct. Now let's talk about the ability to record notes on the job. I'm going to exit this screen, and I'm going to go back to Customer Center, and I'm going to click open the Job Notes tab. Now this screen shows you 4 different places where you can house job notes. So it's a little bit, until you know what it does, it will make perfect sense once I explain it. But the job notes here on the left side of the screen are overall job notes, and they don't necessarily go on any invoices. These are just notes that you're recording about this particular job. But on the right side of the screen, you have 3 separate fields to record job notes that can be put on the next invoice then for the job. So the key here is, if I wanted to record material notes, I click into this box and start recording my material notes. Now, you could do the same thing with labor notes. So once you're recording your labor and you want to explain to your customer why it took longer or whatever, or whatever, you can have scads of notes, that you're not limited in these notes screens at all. So once you get beyond a certain size of notes, you'll see that the scroll bar does become active, and you can store tons and tons of notes in here. I'm going to kind of delete some of those extra lines though, because I don't want extra spaces to show up on my invoice. So whenever you type in job notes, you can click the save button to permanently save them, and then they will also be on the next invoice for this job. Now I'm going to click on the labor button on the Job Center toolbar to post some labor to the job. And just like on the material side, you have complete control over how your posting screen looks. So you can go in and set the fonts, you can separate out your columns a little bit better so you can view them. And you do have things like your quick entry, do not bill, being able to record notes into history right from here as well. So while I'm working in the labor posting screen, this is where I can bring out my worker IDs that were set up in the Worker Center screen directly onto the job. And this is bypassing payroll. This is just updating the job directly. So if I know my worker IDs, I can type one in. Otherwise, I can double click on the worker ID field, and I can access my worker IDs that were set up in the JobMaster Pro. When I double click on one here, it's brought out to the main posting screen. And here I can then record straight time hours, overtime hours, or double time hours. So if I'm working in this screen, the key here though is that I can only record 1 set of hours per line. So on this line, if it's straight time hours, that's all I can put on that line. So there's my price coming out of the Worker Center, and just like material, the labor could possibly be taxed depending on your tax codes. Now there's your job type, and I'm just pressing enter through here. So again, I encourage you to use your quick entry, because that does speed up the entry process. Now let's say on this line I also want to record 2 hours of overtime. this is how we do it. We do it in separate entries, posting through the screen. Now, if I wanted to hotkey back and forth between the material, labor, and direct posting screens, remember these are called the posting screens, I can do that by using hotkeys. So instead of exiting out to the job center and going into another screen, I can hotkey back and forth between these 4 screens, the job center, the material, labor, and direct posting screens. So if I press F7, that means I can go directly into the material posting screen from any of these 4 screens. If I press F8, that will take me to the labor posting screen. And F9, you guessed it. So that's how you can hotkey between those 3 screens very easily. Now you can see here that again my costs are being updated every time something affects the job. And before we do our invoice though, I want to show you one critical screen that I always suggest that you use. So if you click into the profit button on the Job Center toolbar, you are brought to the screen that's entitled Review Job Profit. Now this allows you to look at a job or a single page of the job that hasn't already been invoiced. So in this screen, what it does is shows you all of the detail, but it also shows you a summarized look at the bottom of the screen of the material, labor, direct, what you may have already billed on the job if this is not the first invoice you're preparing for, the markup, even excise tax that would need to be added to the job as a separate line item, what you're charging for the job, discounts, your overall margin, and then any tax that's going to be calculated into the invoice. Now this can be printed out, so if you're preparing the job but you're not comfortable with invoicing, that's fine, because this screen allows you to catch any invoicing mistakes before they even happen. So this is not the invoice, but it's a pre-invoice look at the job. In other words, are all the quantities correct? Did you forget something? I hear that all the time. We went out to replace the panel, but the panel's not recorded on the job. So this is your catch-all before you do any invoicing. If you want to print it out, you can click on the Options menu bar feature at the upper right of the screen and click on Print Report, or as you notice, there's an F3 button there that you can select instead of going into Options. I could just press F3, print it out as many times as I need to, give it to the person in charge of the job. So at this point, if you're doing a job that's not to exceed a certain amount or whatever, there's a myriad reasons why you would use this screen: to catch invoicing mistakes, to make sure that you're making the money that you want on the job, all these things. Because if you use this in conjunction with the job posting screens, then you can go back and forth between these 2 windows and verify everything before the invoice even goes out. Now from these actual posting screens, if you select Go To, you can get to the same screen by selecting Review Job Profit under the Go To menu option. So you can toggle back and forth between these screens, which is really cool. But that's the whole idea, is to make sure that before any invoice goes out, that any mistakes are caught, or at least, eliminating a good 90-some% of the most common invoicing mistakes. And that's pretty cool. That ends the lesson on using the job posting screens.